The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the porcelain plate with a sound that echoed louder than it should have in the dimly lit dining room of my parents' colonial-style home in suburban Seattle. The word hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. Leech. My father, Harold, had said it casually, mid-bite of his overcooked roast beef, as if he were commenting on the weather. "You're basically a leech." "Elena," he repeated, his voice laced with that faux wisdom tone he used when delivering what he thought were life lessons. "Floating through life, tossing us scraps like it makes you the hero." The room went still. My mother, Diane, averted her eyes, stirring her mashed potatoes in slow, deliberate circles. My older sister, Marissa, let out a sharp, stifled laugh that she tried to mask as a cough. Her husband, Tom, shifting uncomfortably beside her. And little niece, Sophie, just stared wide-eyed from her booster seat, too young to understand but old enough to feel the chill. I sat there, at the end of the table, the spot they'd relegated me to, squeezed between the wall and the swinging kitchen door that bumped my chair every time someone passed. The chandelier above flickered faintly, casting uneven shadows that made everyone's faces look harsher, more accusatory. I'd driven 3 hours from Portland that evening, battling Friday traffic on I-5, just to be here for what was supposed to be a family catch-up. But this wasn't catching up. This was an ambush. My throat tightened, a familiar burn rising, but I didn't let it show. Not yet. Instead, I picked up my fork again, speared a green bean, and chewed slowly, letting the silence stretch like a rubber band pulled taut. Inside, though, my mind raced. Leech? After everything? The $3,500 monthly transfers I'd been making for over 18 months, covering their mortgage on this very house after Dad's construction business tanked during the pandemic? The emergency fund I'd wired when Mom's hip replacement racked up bills insurance wouldn't touch? The tuition boosts for Marissa's endless certification courses that never led anywhere? No. This wasn't about money. It was about the invisible lines they'd drawn. The ones that kept me on the outside. Useful but unseen. The conversation lurched back to life. Awkwardly, as if nothing had happened. Marissa pivoted smoothly to Sophie's latest ballet recital, pulling out her phone to show videos. "She's a natural, isn't she?" Mom cooed, her face lighting up in a way it never did when I shared updates about my urban planning firm. Dad nodded along, chuckling at the tiny tutu mishap. I forced a smile, nodding where expected, but my ears rang with that word. Leech. It wasn't the first jab. They'd always painted me as the flighty one, the dreamer who left home at 18 for college in Oregon, chasing degrees in architecture and sustainability instead of settling down like Marissa. But this cut deeper because it wasn't whispered behind my back. It was served on a platter, in front of everyone, seasoned with indifference. As dessert was passed store-bought pie. Because no one bothered with homemade anymore, I excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of helping clear. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, and I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at the drain as water swirled down. My reflection in the window showed a woman I barely recognized, sharp features softened by exhaustion. Dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, eyes that held too many unspoken words. Why did I keep coming back? Why did I keep paying? Habit? Maybe. Or that lingering hope that one day they'd see me, not as the backup plan, but as the one who'd held them up when everything else crumbled. I rinsed a plate, the soap suds foaming white against my skin. From the dining room, laughter floated in, muffled but piercing. They didn't need me here. They never had. But they'd taken everything I gave. And now this. I dried my hands on a dish towel, the fabric rough against my palms, and made a decision. Not a loud one. Not yet. But the kind that starts as a whisper in your gut and builds like a storm on the horizon. Back at the table, I sat quietly through the rest of the evening. My responses clipped, my smiles mechanical. When it was time to leave, hugs were brief, Mom's arms loose. Dad's pat on the back perfunctory. Marissa waved from the doorway. Sophie clinging to her leg. Drive safe, she called, as if the night hadn't cracked open a fault line. I got in my car, the engine humming to life, and pulled out of the driveway under the glow of their porch light. The road back to Portland stretched dark and empty, rain starting to patter against the windshield. My phone buzzed, a text from Marissa. Sorry if Dad was harsh. You know how he is. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled over at a rest stop halfway home, the wipers swishing rhythmically. I opened my banking app, stared at the recurring payment setup. $3,500 to Harold and Diane. Due in 2 days. My finger hovered over cancel. Not tonight, I thought. But soon. The rain picked up, drumming harder, mirroring the pulse in my chest. This wasn't the end. It was the unraveling. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds of my Portland apartment, casting stripes across the hardwood floor. I woke with a heaviness, the kind that lingers after a bad dream. But this was real. Coffee in hand, I sat at my kitchen island, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There we were, family vacations to the Oregon coast. Me building sandcastles with Marissa while Mom snapped pictures. But even then, the dynamics were there, Marissa the golden child, me the afterthought. I'd always been the one to adapt, to fill the gaps. When Dad's business slowed, I was the one who stepped up, fresh out of grad school, sending checks without fanfare. Just helping out, I'd say. But helping turned into expecting, and expecting turned into resenting. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was my cousin, Lena, who lived nearby and had always been more like a sister than Marissa ever was. She breezed in with bagels and cream cheese, her curly hair tied back, eyes sharp as she studied my face. You look like hell, she said bluntly, setting the food down. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Family dinner was eventful. I recounted the night, the word leech dropping like a stone between us. Lena's face hardened. They've been doing this for years. Elena, remember your college graduation? They showed up late. Blamed traffic. But I saw them at brunch with Marissa earlier that day. I nodded, the memories stinging fresh. I'd walk the stage alone, diploma in hand, searching the crowd for faces that weren't there. Later, at the reception, they'd arrived flustered, gifts forgotten. We got tied up, Mom had said. Tied up celebrating Marissa's promotion. Apparently, we ate in silence for a moment, the cream cheese smooth and cool. Why do you keep giving them money? Lena asked gently. I shrugged. Guilt? Love? Some messed up mix. But as I said it, I felt the knot loosen. Love shouldn't feel like a transaction gone sour. After Lena left, I opened my laptop, pulling up property records. Years ago, I bought a small rental in Tacoma as an investment, my first big purchase after landing my job. Dad had suggested putting it in a family trust for protection. I'd agreed. Naive. Trusting. Now. Curiosity, or suspicion, drove me to check the title. My coffee went cold as I read the update. Transferred to Harold and Diane. 6 months ago. No notification. No consent. My name erased. Like I'd never owned it. The screen blurred. Not from tears, but rage simmering low. This wasn't oversight. This was theft, wrapped in familial bonds. I called my lawyer friend, Mark. Voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Can they do that? He paused. Reviewing the docs I emailed.
No.
That's fraud. We can fight it. As we hung up, the rain started again, tapping against the window like insistent fingers. I wasn't just a leech. I was expendable. But expendable things can still bite back. The week blurred into a haze of conference calls and site visits for my latest project, a sustainable housing complex in downtown Portland. But underneath the blueprints and budget spreadsheets, the revelation about the property gnawed at me like a persistent itch. I hadn't confronted them yet. Timing mattered. Instead, I gathered evidence quietly, printing bank statements, digging up old emails where Dad had casually mentioned handling the paperwork for the trust. Each piece slotted into place, building a case not just for court, but for my own sanity. Why had I trusted them? Because family was supposed to be the one constant in a world of variables. But constants can corrode, turn toxic without warning. Sunday brunch with Lena became my anchor. We met at a cozy cafe overlooking the Willamette River, the water choppy under a gray sky. She slid a folder across the table. I did some digging too, she said, sipping her latte. Inside were screenshots from Marissa's social media, posts about family blessings and a recent vacation to Hawaii. Funded, I suspected, by rents from my Tacoma property. One caption read, "Grateful for the unexpected windfalls that keep us afloat." My stomach twisted. Windfalls? That was my hard-earned investment, flipped without a word. Lena reached for my hand. They're rewriting history. Elena, making you the villain in their story. I nodded, the coffee bitter on my tongue. Villains, at least,
Get to fight back.
That evening, back in my apartment, the phone rang, Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail. Heart pounding. Elena. Honey, her voice crackled through the speaker, laced with that practiced concern. We haven't heard from you since dinner. Everything okay? Your father misses you. Misses me? Or misses the check that hadn't cleared yet? I deleted the message, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from nearby parks. Memories flooded in, Christmases where gifts for Marissa piled high, mine sparse and practical, birthdays forgotten, or worse, combined with hers for efficiency. I'd always brushed it off, focused on my career, building a life that didn't revolve around their approval. But approval was a ghost I'd chased too long. The next day, Mark called with updates. The transfer was backdated. Sloppy work, easy to challenge. But Elena, this could get ugly. Family courts hate mess. Ugly? It was already a scar. Let's proceed, I said, voice firm. As I hung up, a text from Marissa popped up. Mom's worried. Call her. I typed back. Busy with work. Short. Evasive. Like their love had always been. The silence that followed felt like victory. Small but sharp. Midweek. I drove to Tacoma unannounced, parking outside the rental, a quaint duplex I'd renovated myself. Solar panels gleaming on the roof. Tenants waved from the porch, unaware of the storm brewing. I snapped photos, documented everything. On the way back, I stopped at a viewpoint overlooking Puget Sound, waves crashing against rocks below. The wind whipped my hair, salty and freeing. For the first time, anger gave way to clarity. They hadn't just taken property, they'd stolen pieces of my trust. My history. But history can be reclaimed. Friday brought the storm. An email from Dad. Payment bounced. Bank error? No error. I'd canceled it days ago. My reply was simple. No more transfers. We need to talk. The phone exploded. Calls.
Texts.
Voicemails stacking like accusations. Mom, this isn't like you. Marissa, selfish much? Dad, after all we've done? All they've done? The irony burned. I ignored them, focusing on a client meeting instead. That night, alone with takeout Thai, I journaled it all, the insults, the erasures, the fraud. Pages filled with raw emotion, ink smudged from hurried strokes. It wasn't therapy, it was ammunition. Lena came over later, bearing wine and empathy. They're panicking, she said, scrolling through family group chats she'd been looped into. Marissa's saying you're having a breakdown. Breakdown?
No.
This was a breakthrough. We toasted to that. Glasses clinking softly. As she left, I stared at the journal. Words have power. Maybe it was time to wield them. The weekend loomed like a shadow. Sophie's birthday party invitation arrived via email, generic. No personal note. Drop by if you can. Drop by? Like an afterthought. I RSVP'd yes. Not out of obligation, but strategy. The party was at their house. Balloons and streamers transforming the backyard into a pastel wonderland. I arrived with a wrapped gift, a science kit Sophie had mentioned loving. Faces turned as I walked in. Smiles tight. Mom hugged me briefly, whispering, "Glad you made it despite everything." Dad grunted a hello, avoiding eye contact. Marissa pulled me aside. "What's with the money stunt?" Dad stressed. I met her gaze. "Stunt? Or boundary?" She huffed, walking away. As cake was served, I placed an envelope beside the gifts. Inside, a letter detailing the payments, the property transfer, the leech comment. "This is the last," I wrote. "I'm done being invisible." Mom opened it later, reading aloud in hushed tones. The party froze. Whispers rippled. Dad's face reddened. "Not here," he hissed. But it was. Public. Undeniable. I left amid the chaos. Head high, the sound of Sophie's laughter fading behind me. In the car, my phone buzzed. Mark. Audit complete. Fraud confirmed. The drive home felt lighter. The road opening up like possibility. Back in Portland, the aftermath unfolded like a slow-motion crash. Emails poured in from extended family, cousins I'd barely spoken to, aunts with concerns. "Heard you're causing trouble," one read. Trouble? I was correcting it. Mom left voicemails. Tearful and manipulative. "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Is this what you want?" Guilt tugged, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about hurting them, it was about healing me. Mark prepped the case, filing for title reversion and damages.
"They'll settle," he said.
Too much to lose. Lose? They'd already lost me. A neighbor from Seattle called Mrs. Patel, who'd baked cookies for us kids growing up. "Diane's been saying you're unstable.
Dear.
That you cut them off out of spite."
Spite? No.
Survival. I thanked her, added the call to my notes. The narrative was spreading. Poison ivy creeping through the community. Marissa amplified it online, vague posts about toxic people and family first. I didn't engage. Instead, I wrote. Late nights, words flowing, the dinner, the erasures, the fraud. Not for publication.
Yet. For me.
Sophie texted secretly. "Miss you. Aunt Elena." My heart ached. "Miss you too.
Kiddo."
Stay curious. Innocence caught in the crossfire, that was the real tragedy. The preliminary hearing was in Boise, neutral ground. Ironic for a family fractured. I flew in, nerves stealing. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. They sat opposite. Mom composed. Dad defiant. Marissa glaring. The judge reviewed docs. Brow furrowed. Clear violation, he ruled. They offered settlement. Property back. Plus cash. I declined. I waive inheritance. All of it. In exchange for admission of fraud. Gasps echoed. Dad stood. You're throwing away your future. I replied calmly. You threw away mine first. Papers signed. It was over. Liberation in ink. Back home. Peace settled. I deleted old photos. Created new memories. The essay evolved into a book pitch. Agents bit. Powerful, one said. As it published. Shares rolled in. No names, just truth. They stayed silent. Sophie wrote, You're brave. Brave? Maybe. Or just done pretending. Publication day dawned quiet. My book hitting shelves with a soft thud in the literary world. Unseen Bonds, a memoir of family and fraud, stared back from my coffee table. Cover stark, a faded family photo with one figure blurred. Reviews trickled in. Raw. Relatable. Strangers emailed stories of their own erasures. Power in solidarity. Family? Radio silence. Save Marissa's cryptic post. Some rewrite history for fame. Fame? This was reclamation. Mark closed the case. Full admission filed. Property sold. Proceeds to charity. Dad's email arrived. Hope you're happy. Happy? Freer. I didn't reply. Sophie visited secretly. Her mom unaware. We baked cookies. Talked stars. Why'd they do it? She asked.
Fear, I said.
Of losing control. She nodded. Wise beyond years. As she left, she hugged tight. You're my family. Tears came then. Healing ones. Life rebuilt, new projects. Friends who saw me. No more leech. Just Elena.
Whole.
Months later. An envelope arrived, no stamp. Hand-delivered. Sophie scrawl. They miss you. But won't say. I do. Inside. A drawing. Us under stars. I framed it. A reminder that bonds can mend. Selectively. The book toured. Audiences nodding. Sharing. One night, a woman approached. Your story saved me from staying. Impact rippled. Family gatherings? I skipped. Peace intact. Dad's health scare came. Marissa called. I sent flowers. No visit. Boundaries held. In the end, walking away wasn't loss. It was gain. Self-respect.
Truth.
What price family if it costs your soul? The question lingers. A quiet echo in reclaimed silence.